Welcome to Season 3 of the Lead with Coffee podcast. It's been a crazy year of managing a pandemic, running our company, and our life with 3 teenage boys. Join us as we continue the journey into how you can change the culture in your business and your home through simple leadership practices. Grab a cup of coffee and get ready to join into today's conversation. Welcome back to the Lead with Coffee podcast. The studio is coming together, David. I'm pretty impressed.
Yeah, you know what? Even we got the lights. Check out the nice lights.
We're so impressed.
But even the setup time is getting shorter and shorter. This is a lot of work to get everything going. So hopefully on that end, you guys are experiencing the nice studio that we have now.
For those that are watching it on YouTube. And
That's
if
right.
you're not, you can go find us on Lead with Coffee on YouTube. Is it just Lead with Coffee?
It's Lead with Coffee on YouTube. Yeah.
There you go. Check us out. We've got a couple up there already and some more to come. So today we want to talk about training to adapt. We heard a great podcast the other day.
Yes.
Tell us the name of the podcast that we were listening to.
The Secret to Success with Eric Thomas and his crew. Those guys are legit. They have such good content. And so we heard what they had to say, and we're just going to put it in our own words because we think this relates so very well to being a small business owner and, just anything that you're involved in, your business, your team, and it relates. So we're going to roll out what it means to adapt.
Yeah, and we talk about it often. We are influenced by so many great leaders, and we want to bring them to you. And one piece, they have a very long podcast, and one piece of it that resonated with me while I was walking was when they were talking about train to adapt. And so it's pretty common to hear people say that we need to plan out every detail of a project for it to go smoothly. And
we might say that.
We might say that, but that's our line of business. We're paid a lot of money to make sure that the plan goes according to plan. And in the client's eyes, yes, everything went according to plan. But with our team, we know that we built in quite a few contingencies, plan A, plan B, plan C, and it all went according to plan. Now, what plan number letter we were on may have shifted as the project went along. So what we know is that most of the time our plans don't work.
They do not.
Or they don't work exactly how we thought they would work. Yeah. And isn't that just life? I mean, we can plan everything to the last detail and the world might shut down.
We plan, God laughs.
And then what, right? So what if we shift our focus a bit and instead of just focusing on the plan, we focus our team on how do we adapt when the plan fails? And what if we started there? What if we actually started with, if this doesn't work, what's our next step? Or how do we adapt?
Yeah, what are our contingencies when the first one doesn't work? And that's kind of the process here, the thought process here is that you can plan, but you have to plan for when the plan doesn't work. And that's just as important as the initial plan.
That was a lot of plans.
That's a lot of plan. Yes.
But haven't you heard it in all the leadership talks? You got to plan the plan. You got to work the plan. Everyone wants to this, guide is just that. It is a guide. And we talk about the roadmap and we talk about that when you're on a journey, there's no straight line from start to finish. It winds, it curves, it has all these different diversions on it. And that's what a plan ends up turning into. It's not a clear roadmap that's going to always take a straight path. And so we talk about planning in the sense of what's your mission? If you think about it in more of military, David loves military stuff and military shows. So if you think about, SEAL team, which is something that we like to watch, they're always having this mission and they have this plan. And how many times does it work the way that they anticipated?
Never, because that's good writing for a show. And that's the whole idea is they have a mission, they set out to accomplish the mission, but the plan itself has to change in order to complete the mission. Right.
So in our sense in business, the mission is the goal. What's the goal of the project, right? Is it to move a corporation? Is it to get X amount of sales? Is it to grow your business by a certain percentage? What is your plan? And what is the goal actually that you're trying to achieve? And then how do you plan to accomplish it?
Yeah, and so that's the thing, whether it's project related or business in general. I mean, come to the end of 2019 and planning for 2020, how many people had set massive sales goals and growth goals and personal goals going into 2020, and that plan had to change. Mm-hmm. The mission didn't change. If you have a business, the intent of the business was to still grow, but how you got to that goal and whatever your mission was, the way you planned it, you had to adjust.
Mm-hmm. And, to relate it to our business, we had this amazing year in 2019, and it became this marker year for, everything that's come since. And so you had success. And so you planned for 2020. And then, your sales weren't worth what they were going to be. Your growth you weren't able to get where you needed to go. And so a lot of businesses rolled those plans to 2021. It was like 2020 didn't really happen. Just push it aside. And all those goals I set at the beginning of 2020 became my 2021 goals. And the reality is 2021 ended up looking a lot like 2020 or worse for a lot of businesses once the reality kind of set in that you had to adapt to what was going to keep happening. And so maybe you didn't get to quite to where you were trying to go, but maybe you had to pivot, which we've talked about. And what did you do? So, David, what do you need to have a mindset to adapt?
I think, number one, you have to realize that there are going to be things that come up. And, one of the things that we're seeing is, and you look on the news and you see all the ships that are parked off of Long Beach Port and all that. So you have supply chain issues that you never had before. Typically on the projects, you had long lead items, transformers and air conditioning units and things like that. But now it's down to just the simple basic things that you can't even get at home. Mm-hmm. So having the mindset of knowing that you have to work around those things. And a lot of the projects that we're working on, we're going to do an initial phase to get a ton of the work done, but there's going to be a second phase when the materials are there, when we can do all the wiring, we can do all the infrastructure, but we can't connect it all until the stuff is in here. And so that's changed the mindset of how we run projects, where typically you want to mobilize once and be done with it. But now you have to shift and adapt that, hey, this is going to be 2 mobilizations. And that's just part of going through it. So, whether it is supply chain issues or it could be staffing, it could be the technology. I mean, think about it. If your company, your business hasn't adapted to using technology in this last couple of years, you are way, way behind. And if there are any of you out there that are still using a fax machine, you're behind being way behind.
Retirement time.
Retire the equipment and then maybe yourself.
We're just going for it today.
Having some fun.
Well, I think the supply chain one is actually a really good conversation, because I don't know an industry partner that we have talked to, and even partners outside of our industry, that have not been impacted by supply chain issues. And it's interesting because you hear it from everything from automotive to construction to just, excess goods that you would use around your house. And when you think about that, if you are creating cars and you're missing a part, do you just stop building? Do you shut down manufacturing? You don't. You build everything, like you said, around that part that you can do to be efficient. And then when that part comes in, you can finish it. So I think that that's part of what everyone has had to realize, is that it is not what it was. And so you have to always have a mindset of adapting. When companies set out for this year, they didn't plan for shipping containers to sit there for 3 to 6 months, but they are. And how is that impacting everything?
Right. And going back to that, I mean, I think this is really, this not necessarily focused on what we're talking about, but in general, that the supply chain issue is, a good piece of it has to do with microchips and the motherboard chips that are all mostly built in Taiwan, and they can't get them out of Taiwan quick enough. And so that is affecting your automobiles, it's affecting your computers, it's affecting all the technology that they're putting in buildings. And it's crazy. and companies are adapting, and they're looking to Europe and other countries to see who else can produce this type of stuff, because wow, you take out Taiwan and you've pretty much brought everyone to a hold. So that's what we're talking about here. Knowing that now, how do you adapt? What do you do to get around those things? And that was just an example of it. But you have to have the mindset that here's the plan, these are the steps we're going to take, but you almost have to step back and go bigger picture, higher level of what happens when this doesn't work, and being prepared for those things up front. Not only do you have to adapt when they don't work in the field, but you have to start looking at it from a higher level of when we start to execute this plan, if it doesn't work, what are the other plans going to be?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think that what the last year has done is it has shifted all of us as leaders to have to adapt.
Yeah.
But we don't really talk about adapting our planning. And so I think staffing is another really good one. A lot of companies in the beginning of planning for their year and how they were going to serve their clients had an X number of staff that they needed. And now it's called the Great Resignation, where employees are not coming back, or they have decided they want a certain lifestyle, they want to work a different way. They know that it is really an employee-driven market, and you can go search for the job that you really want right now and make a lot more money maybe than you are in your current job. And so when you talk about how that's impacting everyone, you can't accomplish your plan if you don't have the right team. And so how are you keeping your team? What are you doing with your team? And if you lose a team member, how's your plan changing? We lost one of our key team members last year who wanted some advancement, and that was great. We always encourage our staff to chase their dreams. But that shifted all of our plans for what we were doing with the business, because then you have to reset as a small business and say, who's going in? How are we going to serve this client well? And what does this look like for the next 12 months? Or 24 months.
Yeah, and just going back to staffing in general, because I think it's a huge piece and everyone's affected by it, whether it be like us in California, there's a mass exodus of people wanting to live in California and they've gone to other states.
Not wanting to live, wanting to leave.
Wanting to leave California. Not wanting to live in California.
There you go.
Yeah, everyone knows that. But you've also, so there have been a lot of people that have shifted their own personal plans, and their plan A was to work for a company for 10, 15 years until they're going to retire or whatever they were going to do. And then they got stuck at home and realized that, hey, they're pretty good at this technology thing. You know what? Maybe I can just run a business out of my home doing something with technology, selling digital courses or something of that fact. So I know of a couple people that have left their jobs and pursued doing something completely online and are killing it, but that leaves a huge gap in the position that they had. This could have been an architect or an engineer or a construction manager that decided to completely shift their life and do something different. And we're seeing a lot of that, and those are hard gaps to fill.
Mm-hmm. So let's talk about how you change your mindset. And when your plan changes, studies show that your mood changes. And I think we all know this, right? We have a plan to go on a vacation and it falls through. We are grumpy, like we were for the last year and a half when all of our trips got canceled, right? It changes your mood. When your plan for your project isn't going as it's supposed to, it changes your mood. You may be confident in that plan, and then now you're stressed and you're anxious and you're spinning a little bit trying to figure out, how do I land the plane again and what do I do? And so you don't have the same drive when you have to shift and adapt always as you had in plan A, because in your mind plan A was the plan. So part of being a really great leader is knowing that you're going to go through this and you're going to catch yourself, because it's okay to have all these feelings and emotions, but you can't live there. So your plan didn't work. Great. You have, I like to say, like 20 minutes to sit in that. And then you need to kind of like step into it, right? Maybe that 20 minutes is a break, a walk, whatever it is for you that makes you go like, I just need to walk away from this for 20 minutes. And then I'm going to respond to this. And maybe it's 5 minutes. But the point is you have to figure out how to shift. You got to shift your mindset. You can't stay in this mood. Your mood's going to drive your team's mood, right?
It does. And, the perspective that I heard, which really triggered me, like, yeah, that's totally it, is if you have spent, you've spent 6 months or a year or whatever the case may be on putting a plan together, whether that is to grow your business or to, manage a project. And, we're going to keep going back to managing projects because that's what we do. That's how we can relate. But if you have to shift that plan, again, the mission is the same. The mission is to complete the project or complete the next year being, financially stable in the business, or maybe the mission is still to have growth. But if the plan A does not work, can you shift your mind to have just as much enthusiasm for plan B and plan C and plan D as you did initially for plan A? And that's that mind shift you have to have, is like, well, plan A didn't work. Well, I guess we can do plan B. We'll get there and it'll be okay. Or as the leader, do you put the energy out saying, plan A didn't work. Hey, plan B, we're going to try it. It might not work too, but we know plan C's got some good momentum and we're going to stick to it. And keeping that momentum, and it is you, leader, that has to keep that momentum going. You have to build up your team and say, you know what, that didn't work out, but we're going to keep chugging along and we're going to have as much passion and energy into plan F as we did in plan A. And it's the only way you're going to be able to not only succeed and complete the mission, but to move forward and know that you've learned a ton of things going through that experience.
Yeah. As consultants, we do this daily with our clients, and we often will start with a strategy of how we're going to solve whatever situation that they need help with. And as you're meeting weekly and you're spending time together and you're going through it, you're starting to adapt it. You're starting to adapt it to the needs of the employees, to the needs of the leadership team, to the needs of the client in general. And you're constantly shifting, but it's how you present it. So the chaos may be in your office, but as soon as you got that client on the phone, it is, okay, we've assessed the situation. We've come up with a new strategy that we feel is going to meet the timelines and expectations. Or if it's not, we're transparent about that.
Right.
This is what we feel is going to be the best solution for you right now. It's going to be a 2-week delay, but here's all the things that we can do to try to mitigate that if we can. We can't always mitigate things. Sometimes it is just simply environmental or something going on or supply chain or a building situation or whatever it is in your line of work. You can't always mitigate it. If there's a funding problem, you can't mitigate that.
Yeah.
But you can adjust your plan, adjust your time frames, and that's business.
Right. And I think it goes back to, I think we hear it a lot too. It says you can't change the things that happen to you, but you can change how you react to them, how you deal with them. And it's the attitude is everything. And that's why I'm saying keeping the enthusiasm up. And we'll go back and talk about SEAL Team again because it's such a cool show. I just, I really like it, and it is what it is.
Did you secretly want to be a Navy SEAL when you were a little boy?
I can't say that I did. But
you grew up next to all the Navy bases, and maybe subconsciously being a frogman is why you love this show.
Hey, it's a pretty cool gig.
You would go do that training course in a second if they invited you.
Yeah, I actually got a chance to do that when I was, I think in like junior high. I had a friend who worked on the base, and we were able to go run the course. That was pretty cool.
Now we might just, need a therapist or a chiropractor after.
Yeah. So going back to the show, and that's the whole point. And most shows do that, where there's the issue that they got to figure out, and they go to the plan. But what the Navy SEALs do in particular is they work the problem. They focus on, let's work the problem. Here's the mission. Plan A didn't work. Let's work through the problem step by step, different scenarios, and that's where you bring your team together and you just focus on what are our best options and keep going, keep working through that until you come up with, and that's where you develop the plan B, C, D, and E. And so you got to go up high. You got to look big picture. overall. And a lot of times when we're in it, it's hard to figure out what the issues are. But the second you step back and kind of look at the big picture of everything, gives you the opportunity to see things that you might not have seen before. And maybe plan B is even better and faster and more efficient than plan A ever was. But it is going through and mentally, instead of saying plan A didn't work, we failed, what are we going to do? It's like, no, let's work the problem one piece at a time. Let's bring the team together. Let's figure this thing out. Let's, spend some time on understanding what went wrong and what we can do to push this thing forward.
I think it ties into our last podcast of failure to launch, in that just because you have something that didn't work, it doesn't mean that you just, throw it away and you stop trying. It's like you just never know what's going to come around that corner. So when a plan doesn't work, sometimes it is okay to tear up the plan, though. ET likes to call it blow up the plan.
Blow up the plan.
Just blow it up, right? And sometimes you have to do that when the plan that you set in place just really is not aligning with where you need to go. Maybe that plan gets torn up and plan B is 100% different than plan A. But the point is you didn't stop moving forward. You still have to move forward. If you're trying to be a small business owner, every time something goes wrong, you don't fire all your employees and shut your door. I mean, that's not what anyone starts and desires when they run a business. And same if you're a leader. If something goes wrong, you don't just send everybody home and tell them don't come back for a month, right? It's like, let's dig in. Let's figure it out. Let's problem solve. And I think as change management leaders, it's funny because we teach it all the time. It doesn't mean that we move through it smoothly every time either. Like, we have plenty of times in here with our team where we are like, tear this thing up. We are over it. It is not working. We don't like change. And then we have to catch ourselves and go like, what would we tell our clients?
Right.
Would we, if we saw them acting the way we're acting right now, is this what we know and how we like to move things forward? And sometimes it's just a pause, reset, tear up that vision that you had over there of how it was going to end, and just start a new plan.
And I think, typically where we are this time of year, this week, IFMA World Workplace, International Facility Management Association, we're both part of it. They have their yearly conference, and their conference this year was in Anaheim in California. And they knew that wasn't going to happen, so they tore up that plan. And right now they did a couple of things. They put it in Florida, which was way more open to having large gatherings. And also they did virtual. So we're not able to go, but I signed up and I'm watching it virtually. But they're still having the same impact. Maybe they don't have 5,000 to 6,000 people there like they typically do, but there's a lot of people there still right now. And the fact that prior to COVID, you couldn't watch it virtually. And now you have that option. How many more people do you think they're going to attract that can't either afford to go to a 5-day conference or don't have the time to, but can watch it virtually? And I think it's a great example. They tore up the plan. They were forced to change, and they did it. And I think that's a great idea. You can't. The whole intent of this is, you got to tear up the plan instead of trying to force the plan. If you try to force the plan to work, and you spent, just say you spent 2 more weeks trying to force a plan that wasn't going to work, instead of doing the stop and pause and think about it and spend those 2 weeks of time developing the new plan. And I think that we can all relate that there have been some things in our lives and our business that we tried to force to happen, which inevitably didn't. Maybe you got a little farther with it, but it still failed because it wasn't the right plan. And that's the whole thing, is if you get to a point, you got to either blow it up, tear it up, stop and start over, because there's so many other opportunities that are there for you. And most likely that plan was going to fail for a good reason.
Definitely. Yeah, I think when it comes to the conference, it's a really interesting correlation. I really think I love the concept of your setback might be a setup, and that setup might be setting you up for something so much more successful.
Yeah.
And so all these conferences that figured out how to have less people in person so they could still do it and have this hybrid model. What happens next year when they can have 6,000 people plus a hybrid model?
Yep.
Right? So right now it feels like, oh, I'm really conceding with my plan, but it might turn into that plan B really is going to give you so much more growth and revenues and profit and outreach to people that couldn't come, because people are going to come back. They're going to come back to your business. They're going to come back to your events if you did something right. And so if you can do both, man, like you're setting yourself up for success. That's adapting right there.
And I would have to say, and I don't know it offhand, but the company that they hired to run their virtual platform, don't you think that company has exploded as
Definitely.
far as growth over these last couple of years? And somebody that had an idea of, hey, I think we can do some of this virtual, and now running 5,000 to 6,000 attendee conferences on a virtual platform.
Yeah.
I mean, and I would have to say that probably most of those are small businesses, small businesses around the United States that have figured that out and have pivoted, shifted all those things, and are killing it now.
Yeah, you can imagine the first time they proposed it a couple years ago to an organization like an IFMA, and they probably went like, "No, people won't watch.
They must be here."
They do in person. That's the only way it works, right?
Yeah.
And now those little companies are sitting there going like, "See,
told you so."
We kept adapting. We kept waiting. If you have a strong idea, man, just don't lose faith in yourself and your ability for it to come together, because it's not your timing, but man, the timing might come and your little dream might just explode. So, to close this out, training to adapt, should be a part of your everyday in your organization, no matter what level you are in the organization, whether you're doing it for yourself, for your team, or you are a leader. You should have this mindset that plan A is great, but let's have some contingency plans for if it doesn't work, because odds are something in that plan isn't going to work. And so you just don't want to just throw it away on the first time or tear it up on the first time. If you do tear it up, you're tearing it up to build plan B, not walk away.
Thanks for listening to the Lead with Coffee podcast. You can find out more about us at leadwithcoffee.com or follow us on Facebook and Instagram. If you love our time together, please share it with your friends to help grow our community of leaders. Remember, life gets better with every cup of coffee. Just don't buy the cheap stuff. Mahalo.